Good morning. I'm Libby from Quantum, the official sailmaker for the Helly Hansen Sailing World Regatta Series. We've partnered with Sailflow Weather to bring you daily forecasts and expert tips to start your day. We're also going to have Jeff Thorpe and Doug Stewart on the water today with you and all weekend, taking photos in preparation for some Zoom debriefs that we'll host next week. They'll be looking at sail setups and crew work, stuff like that. It's a great opportunity, regardless of your brand on your sail. And I'll put the link here in the chat so you can sign up to be added to the Zoom call for your fleet. We also have overnight service, both on site at AYC and at our loft very nearby at 1047. Take it away, Shea.
Thank you, Libby. It's Friday, May the 5th, and it's Cinco de Mayo. So those celebrating Cinco de Mayo, please be safe out there. Today, we have some light winds to talk about. In fact, light winds for most of the race, but don't be too concerned about what the model guidance is showing for the most part. I think we're going to have a little bit more breeze than what the earlier models were showing yesterday and the day before. So real quick, with me today is Jason Curry. We'll have Scott Nixon joining tomorrow along with Andrew Waters on Sunday. So that'll be the speakers, and we'll be pinging on Jason in just a second here. Real quick housekeeping rules. If you do have any comments or feedback, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll field those at the very end of the segment. We're always happy to hear any of the feedback that you have. So please let us know how we're doing and how you think the flow of the webinar goes. Forecast for Sailflow, shameless plug for us. If you haven't tried the app, please do. It's free to download, free 2-week trial version for the Pro membership. And you'll get all the sensors in the area. What you're seeing right here is Holly Point, which I'm going to be using for this forecast, simply because it's the best sensor that's out closest to the race rings out over the center channel. So please feel free to give that a try. For the agenda, we're going to be talking about the overview tidal currents, which is going to be probably the biggest element for this race. And then also the breeze, the sea breeze, which will start to fill in tomorrow and into Sunday. And we'll get into that forecast point here shortly. Let me go ahead and just real quick, I want to ping on Jason. Jason, how are you this morning? How are the conditions out there right now? What are you seeing?
Good, Shea. Thanks for having me. It's a beautiful morning in Annapolis, but there's no, looking outside, there's not a lot of wind. It's a little chilly, but it's going to be a super nice day, and into the mid 60s.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm seeing just a few clouds here and there. It looks like a little bit of fog inland up towards the foothills and up in the mountain areas, and it looks like that'll sort of bleed off, but I'll go ahead and just share screen again with the visible satellite imagery. And we can see here over the Chesapeake, really not a lot of cloud activity, mainly up in the mountainous zones, and then maybe some surface to mid-level clouds filling in over towards the east. And what we have is we have high pressure that is going to be expanding down from Canada and down over the area. So in lieu of, remember the upper low that was just spinning over the Great Lakes for several days, there was northwest flow, pretty strong northwest flow across the entire area for days and days and days. And now that's moved off. You can see the isobars just out in the Atlantic from that as it moves off to the east. And high pressure over Canada is going to be sinking down over the Appalachian Mountains and slowly filling in. And then one of the lobes of high pressure of this is going to be heading out over the Atlantic Ocean. That's going to bring us a return southerly flow as we get into tomorrow. But for today, it looks like what we have is central high pressure over the Appalachians, which is mainly an extension of the one over Canada. What happens is we have a ridge axis, which is an extension of the center that goes down and through and out over the Atlantic. So this is what's going to be controlling our weather for today. So light gradients overall. I do think we're going to continue to see this northwest flow for a little bit longer, and then it starts to veer north and then northeast to northeast this afternoon. So that's what's really in control of the weather for now. And then if we go a little bit farther into the future, that high pressure continues to expand over the area and expand over the Atlantic. And you see that lobe slowly, the ridge axis is shifting out over the Atlantic and this way. So we end up with a little bit of Atlantic high pressure on the southeastern corner of it, which will bring us that return southerly flow. So that's what's occurring right now. If we look over the area, we have northwest flow at about 7 knots, gusting to 9. That will continue to be the case for at least the next hour or so, and then we start to see winds veering. So if we look at all the different model selections here, even the high resolution models, we get into the 5 to 9 knot ranges, which that's what I'm going to hold for today. We're going to continue to see 5 to 9 knots. We may see some fluctuations down to 3 to 7 as winds veer north and eventually northeast and the northeast by about 2:00 p.m. So we're at about 318 degrees now. We're going to continue to veer 340 360 to 0 right around noon. And then as we get towards 1 o'clock, we're going to be veering more towards 20 degrees, and we'll be lucky to get 40 to 50 by 1 or 2 o'clock. I'd be really surprised to see even more than that on the east-northeast bend. But I really think we're just going to see a very slow veer in the 5 to 9 knots ranges today. One of the things to talk about is the current. And so here at 10 o'clock a.m., this is a high resolution model that we have in our products, which you can see the ebb is going to be primarily an ebb. If we go back to the slide deck, let's go ahead and take a look at the ebb. So we have a slack at 8:23 a.m. in about 30 minutes, actually about 15 minutes from now. And then at 11:43, we go to max ebb. Now, NOAA has minus 1.31 knots or 1.31 knots. The Conowingo Dam, this is something that is really interesting to me, because doing wind forecasting and race forecasting, we have to now include dam discharge from the Conowingo Dam. So that adds to the current. So what NOAA is seeing is historicals here. This is more of a virtual sounding for these speeds. And so they don't really include the Conowingo Dam discharges because there isn't a regularity to that, like there is with natural current, natural tides. So going to the Conowingo Dam, there was a lot of rain that was associated with that upper low over the Great Lakes. And so what that did was it filled the watershed upstream. And now they're having to discharge slowly as time goes on to balance the Susquehanna River. So now we're at about 120,000 cubic feet per second on the discharge, which adds to that current. So instead of it being 1.3 knots, we're probably going to be looking at more like 2 knots as we go on the course. And the high resolution model is actually picking up on that based on the ebb. Plus, I think I'd have to really check and see where we're pulling the data, but I think it really is balancing this with what's going on with the Conowingo Dam discharge. So this looks pretty good. I think we're about 1.7 to 2 knots today. And if it's more than that, I'd really like to know. I'd like to hear the feedback on it because it's going to matter on the course when you have a wind aligning with the current. It makes for difficult hauls, right? So on the reach, you're going to be gold, right? But on the hauls, it's going to be really tough to get back up wind. So this is where I'm going to bring in Jason to talk about 11 o'clock a.m. We see that current at peak values, right? 11, 12, 1 o'clock. We get to 2 o'clock. That's when we start to see the current slow down. So historically, we know that the current, as we start to fade on the ebb, the sides of the channel start to turn earlier, about 1 hour to 2 hours earlier than where it's coming down the center of the channel. So with that, I'll go to Jason. Jason, what are your thoughts here on the course, given the wind, the veering wind today from northwest over to northeast, and then also with this roughly 2 knot current?
Yeah, it's gonna, if we get off on time, Shea, at 11 o'clock, it's gonna be all about, keeping eyes out of the boat. Obviously a lot of current lining up with the breeze direction. So, looking at it right now, just with, obviously past history of the bay, it's going to be kind of left side favored, staying out of the middle of the bay where the most current's going to be. And that's probably more than likely going to apply to every circle out there, is just favoring the left side of the course. If you're getting upwards of 2 knots of current, and 5 to 9 knots of breeze, it's going to be all about getting upwind. And I would say if you can get off the line and stay on starboard, it's going to be all about getting to the left side of the course. And then, as the day goes on and the current starts to slacken a little bit, then, you can start playing more to the middle, more to the right side of the course.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be the toughest element, I think, for this race. Is we're going to be in an ebb pretty much every single day during it, and as we get into tomorrow, we see the winds. I'll share a screen in just a second, but just understanding that alignment of that wind. If we get an opposing wind tomorrow and into Saturday, it becomes a little bit easier to manage. But that current's going to be really dumping out until the Conowingo Dam discharge lowers, right? So we're a little over 20 feet May the 3rd on the height of the water. Now it's dropping to about 17 feet. And as that level starts to drop and the discharge lessens, then the current will lessen with it. So we'll have to watch that day to day as we go forward. I think it's definitely interesting from a hydrological aspect on how to gauge the current and how to actually do forecasting for the current. So here we go for the forecast for tomorrow and Sunday. It looks like that high pressure will expand out over the Atlantic. We'll get more or less a coastal ridge building. And this doesn't really, the WPC puts out a surface map. It doesn't really capture the exact way that the ridge lines up on the coast. And so what we end up with is a southeast sea breeze south, maybe even towards south by tomorrow night. The models are all over the place for tomorrow. And I think what we'll probably start out with is that Appalachian lobe of high pressure is showing that northeast or northeast flow tomorrow morning, as it normally would. And then it transitions towards the southeast sea breezes by the afternoon. Light winds so far in the 3 to 7 knot ranges. However, I do think I'm a little bit more optimistic about this. I think it'll build a little bit more than that, simply because the coastal ridge will force it during heat fluxing by late morning to early afternoon. I think we'll get just enough sea breeze to push it up towards 6 to 10 or 7 to 11 knots. And then same thing into Sunday, a little bit more southerly wind as that high pressure really banks out over the Atlantic Ocean a little bit more, but we see a little bit more speed with that too. The NAM 3 kilometer is picking up over 10 knots, just over 10 knots by 1 o'clock. So that's something to look forward to. We'll definitely be tracking this day to day and looking at the breeze, how it's going to be affected, how it's going to be affecting the area over Annapolis for that matter. Any questions, Jason? Any concerns? Anything else you want to add before we sign off for today?
No, just hoping we get some racing in today, Shea. You know, it's obviously a super light air forecast, but it's typical Annapolis. You know, you get, no wind, a lot of wind at this time of the year, but, fingers crossed that we get a little bit of breeze just to get something off today.
Right. Yep. And again, for a recap, for those who are just joining, just a brief recap, we're going to be starting northwest 5 to 9 knots. We're going to keep that 5 to 9 knots range as winds veer north and then eventually northeast to northeast from 0 to 20 to 40 degrees by 1 to 2 o'clock p.m. So stay safe out there. Have a good time no matter what you're doing. Watch out for that current. And I'd love to hear the feedback on it from you and others and our panelists tomorrow. We'll see you back tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock a.m. Thanks a lot, Jason and everyone.
Thanks, Shea.
All right.
See you, mate.